I just want to preface all this by saying that the video component of this video doesn't actually matter. This is a pure audio log of my thoughts on the subject. So in the indie scene, there's a pretty distinctive medium, I should say, that pervades a lot of indie games. I'm talking about an artistic medium. Specifically, not to beat around the bush, pixel art. Pixel art is used by many indie video game companies and people working on indie video games. Why? Why is it so pervasive? So for one, it's very nostalgic, right? Like, people are drawn to the simplistic designs that remind them of video games from old. From the time when video games only look like pixel art, right? But there's actually a very strong utility to it as well. Namely, pixel art is very much easier to create than, like, standard traditional drawings or 3D models or anything like that. On average, they're easier to work with and make look good as well. So there's a lot of reasons why indie companies would want to use it. But I kind of want to discuss how we can kind of pay attention to the medium in a bit more of a self-aware way. Because there is experimentation going on with pixel art. Like, people are pushing the boundaries as they would any other medium. I just kind of want to, like, throw my hat into the arena of ideas, so to speak. So let's talk about it. For one, I kind of want to recognize the whole idea of turning 3D stuff into kind of pixel art like stuff. And I'm not just talking about low poly, right? I'm talking about taking a 3D model and shrinking it down, basically, and rendering it in low resolution. This is an effect used to pretty good ability by several successful developers. I think most notably that I know, Dead Cells. Dead Cells is a very popular game that used this very strategy. They had basically, I think the story is, they had one 3D guy, and he was also like their one animator guy. And they needed all these assets for their game, and so he created a pipeline where he creates models, right? And the models can be really modular, so he takes advantage of the modularity. There's a Gama Sutra article of this guy wrote. I'll link it below. You can learn like further details about this. But basically, long story short, like I said, he created this workflow to creating 3D models, rendering them into really low resolution, generate normal maps and such for lighting purposes, and then handed it off to the programmers. And they handled, I believe they handled the post-processing, all the special effects. He might have handled it himself, actually, but I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. But the point is, he used the 3D, like, he animated everything in 3D and then rendered it down into low resolution to look like pixel art. He probably did some touching up and such at that low resolution, but if you look at a clip of Dead Cells, it is very obvious that they're doing this. Like, even if you don't know the exact intricacies or how to kind of do that sort of thing, how to the implications of like making a model and rendering it in low resolution, even if you don't know that, the pixel art looks weird. I mean, frame by frame, they don't really, but the movement is very much it looks interpolated. And interpolation just means, like, basically when you have a body that in one pose, and then you have the body like kind of move to a different pose, the movement between those two poses is very much algorithmically like kind of calculated. Like they didn't animate every single like frame but in between those two poses. And this is very true for the animations of Dead Cells. Now, I'm not trying to disparage the game. The game is very well made. The animations are fine. They're punchy. They work. what I'm just trying to say is that I don't think this was heavily considered in the production. He doesn't really say anything about it. He just says he animated it, in like 3D and then shipped it to low res. I'm not sure they talked about this and how like that the implications of like kind of having that really interpolated look, because that kind of bleeds through Dead Cells' style, and I'm not sure it wasn't entirely purposeful, And I kind of want to raise awareness about that, because there are ways you can kind of mitigate that look. If you kind of combed over it, like give it one more pass, one more quality pass. And I'm not trying to say like look more at the animation. I'm more saying like after you finish rendering, you can strategically remove some of those frames, and it'll make it look like more traditional pixel art. It'll make it look more punchier, which I feel personally, I think that pixel art begets that more punchy kind of animation. The less detailed animation, like that leaves more to the imagination. I feel like that capitalizes on the strength of pixel art. So, like I took advantage of that myself. I made recently last semester. I made this animation for Rose and Thorn. I haven't shared it yet because I'm not happy enough to share it publicly. But maybe I'll put a clip up on here for that purpose. We'll see. In any case, I made a run cycle, and the run cycle looked kind of weird. It looked very interpolated. It was the problem. But when I strategically removed some of those frames, it looked more like her run cycle originally. Like, wait, did I mention, to be clear, I 3D modeled Rose. And then I applied the same strategy as the Dead Cells folks, and I made it. I rendered all like the animations in low res. This achieved like animation and stuff, and I enjoyed animating in 3D. But again, the look was the problem, and like the frame by frame look. I mean, it did look a little awkward because like, I'm not the best 3D modeler, of course, having just started. But the point is, I animated in a way that actually made it look like, it's kind of normal pixel art animation. Like, you couldn't really tell. It was like 3D modeled, unless you kind of like paid close attention to the animation. Another person who kind of does this is Tom Oliver. He is an indie game dev as well, up and coming. He made a demo for his game Azumi. Azumi and the Vertical Slice is his demo, and he too is rendering 3D models in low resolution in order to make pixel art, to make it more palatable to being a 2D platformer, as well as kind of making it easier to make it look good in that sense, because less detail. With less detail, you leave more to the player's imagination, and you take advantage of what they like their interpretation of like the pixel art happening. So he does that with his game Azumi, and you might notice it for some creatures more than others. Specifically, like the troll looks very much like a kind of 3D animated creature, like rendered really low. Not so much the animation, but just the frame by frame, like the colors on him. It doesn't seem like someone drew this with pixel art. It seems like it's a model, right? But Azumi herself is very successful at just looking like pixel art, right? All of her animation, like at least most of her animation, I feel like, is very much like it doesn't really quite look like a model. It looks like pixel art. So I just think having that in mind could be very important to the independent game developer. If you want that pixel art look and you want to be a more traditionalist pixel art look, but all of your skills are in 3D, you should keep in mind the strengths of pixel art more thoroughly is what I would say. You should consider that you can you don't like rendering is only half the battle. You have to make sure that it communicates or capitalizes on the strengths of pixel art afterwards, after the fact. For another thing, to speak about lighting. So I'm talking about like normal maps and such, like applying fake lighting basically to 2D things. This is taken advantage of in many types of games, not just pixel art games. It's a very neat effect, really, to apply to kind of like fake lighting with shaders and normal maps. It's very interesting. For pixel art, it's kind of a big thing that's used. Lots of games nowadays kind of use that kind of thing to kind of give the scenes a bit more of layered dynamism, make them a bit more modern looking, while still having that retro like pixel art feel. I myself want to try to use it in Rose and Thorn at some point. I just want to kind of comment on that kind of mixed media look. I think pixel art can suit that kind of thing, a mixed media look. But I just think that you should probably be conscious of that as well. That, like, the more you kind of dip into that modernity, am I saying that right? Modernity? The less kind of retro you get it. And you have to make sure that the pixel art kind of agrees with that, right? You have to make sure that, like a Shovel Knight, you can't really do Shovel Knight and do the mixed media thing. Because Shovel Knight is very much like, they're trying to do like, oh, this is basically an NES game. Like, they're very much about that, like, very explicitly and very, aggressively. I don't think you could pull it off in a way that looks good if you're trying to do like a Shovel Knight look. So one game I feel like that really capitalizes on this mixed media approach is this one game called what's it called? Was it Duelyst? Duelyst, yes. This game has a very mixed media approach, same as I was saying. They have pixel art like characters, and all the pixel art characters have these cool like lighting effects on their attacks and stuff, and they're on like a traditionally like or digitally drawn background, looks really beautiful, and then the interface is very modern. Kind of reminds me of like the League HUD. That kind of approach, like where you have all these different kinds of medias, but like they all adhere to a unifying style. I feel like that can be really successful as well. In the end, this is kind of just like a PSA. I'm not really saying anything like revolutionary here. I'm just trying to make it understood that to really think about all of your decisions when, like, you know, deciding the aesthetic of your game in accordance to like your skill set. I myself, I've experimented with this kind of thing, right? Like I said, I was trying to experiment with like a 3D Rose. I don't think I'm going to be sticking with that. I think I'm just going to do the, I'm going to walk the hard path and just learn pixel art myself and kind of, figure out how to apply normal maps kind of, in a more, boots on the ground way rather than rely on 3D space. In any case, this conversation that I decided to have on my channel was inspired by a discussion, basically the same discussion I had on my stream. So if you're interested in having like these kinds of conversations with me, like in person, like live, where you can introduce your own ideas into the subject, then by all means, hit up my stream at twitch.tv/TayoDevs. If you prefer me to stream on YouTube, though, let's say you don't like Twitch, let me know in the comments. I might try to stream every so often on YouTube if there's a significant following of mine who would prefer me to stream on YouTube. Anyways, hit me up on Discord if you want to have a chat, or my Twitter. You can DM me on there as well. Links in the description. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.